welcome into Shooting the Breeze. I'm Samir Kumar, joined with my fellow friend Tim Mohoff, and we have a special guest today. We have Damon Amendolara, host of the DA show on CBS Sports Radio, and Warwick, New York native, who joins us today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Damon. It means a lot to see a fellow Orange County guy joining us.
Samir, my pleasure, man. As you all know, Timmy knows from Warwick and you know from Monroe. It's time for us to let everybody know Hudson Valley is not just apple orchards and outlet malls. And so we are more than that. We are sports fans. We got sports takes. So I'm glad to be on here, man. It means a lot that you guys would ask.
Absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't I ask? I mean, you're from Warwick, New York. You know, you've been all around the sports media industry. You've had various stops around the country, and your experience given and also your location to us just kind of put two and two together. We value that, and we definitely value that experience and input you would have. And of course, we had to ask, and I'm so glad you were able to do it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you asking, and happy to do it, man. So, what are we going to chat about today?
Well, the Yankees are gearing up for a big run at the pennant and the World Series run. They acquired Happ and Britton in the last couple of days, giving up some of their valued prospects, not their most valued prospects, not top five, but some guys that may have some value down the road. But would you say that's enough right now, Damon, for them to really make a run at it and compete with the likes of the Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox?
Well, I really like what Cashman did because, as he just alluded to, he didn't give up the major prospects. He didn't give up the top five guys in the farm system. These are kind of lesser deals or lesser prospects, I should say, to get good deals done. And I think what he looked and saw was there just wasn't a market that was appetizing to him for a number two starting pitcher. We know that Severino's their number one, but could they get a number two? And I think the price is too high, or those guys just weren't available. So he said, let me do number one, let me shore up the bullpen, get myself Britton, and kind of like the Royals a number of years ago, even if I don't have a great rotation, if I have a great bullpen, it makes my rotation look better. And then secondly, as we just saw with the Happ situation, he's not a number two, but he extends the depth of your rotation into the playoffs. So I like these two deals. I will say, I think this might just be a stroke of bad luck in terms of the year the Yankees are having. They're a really good team, and it just so happens that the Red Sox are historically great this year. Because they're historically great, you might just get stuck in that one-game playoff, even though under normal years, you'd win the division. So I think the Yankees are good. I don't think they're as great as the Red Sox, but who knows, maybe Boston comes back down to earth a little bit. But right now, the Red Sox are playing such amazing baseball, it's just crazy to think that the Yankees could win 95 games and find themselves in the one-game playoff.
That's just the year's been, man. It's just crazy. Boston does not look like a team that's slowing down anytime soon. Maybe August will be a different story, but that's just the type of year it's been.
Yeah, Damon, I'm looking at my notes here. I mean, I've seen kind of speculation over the last couple of days as to, just how many deals that Cashman is going to try to make before the deadline. But to stay with the Yankees here for just a minute, are they done, do you think? Is there another move coming? I know, with Hal Steinbrenner, things have been in the last several years about getting under that luxury tax threshold, and they're coming up pretty close to that number here after making the moves that they have in the last couple of days. But is there any way that they kind of swing and try to add one more pitcher, or if there's some kind of deal that maybe not at the front of everyone's mind right now, but maybe something that's under the radar kind of pops up for a position player? Not that there's an overwhelming need there, but is there anything else that Brian Cashman has left to do here to try to narrow that gap still that can be, maybe in order to erase some of those games back in terms of the standing with the Boston, as you said, just kind of rolling at a historic rate right now?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a position player that Cashman's going to deal for. I think he'll always have his ear out for a number two starter, because I think what ends up happening is the Red Sox are so good, and the Yankees, if they end up going into that one-game playoff, they're going to throw Severino more than likely, and let's say they win that one-game playoff. Well, now you enter a series against the Red Sox, and you have taken Severino out of the first set of games because he's already pitched. So if the Yankees have a deal to be done for a number two pitcher out there that they know can really start game two of the AL ALDS should they get there against Boston, I think he's going to listen. But I wouldn't be surprised if what we've just seen is the end of his dealing, because I think that was what he wanted right off the start. And if he didn't get the deal he wanted now, if that guy wasn't out there now, I got a feeling Cashman made these last two deals for Britton and for Happ saying, okay, well, you know what? Then that guy's not out there, so let me do other deals. In other words, if that number two starter was out there, I think we would not have necessarily seen the last two deals. Because we saw the last two deals, I think that means they're done dealing.
Absolutely. Me personally, I don't think the Yankees really gave up that much to get J Happ. I think Drury is his value has taken a shot this year with the migraines, and Billy McKinney, I don't really see him being a long-term fit in the Yankees outfield. Sure, they may have some value down the road. Maybe they pan out and turn out to be better than I'm thinking right now, but there's just no spot for them on the roster right now. It's all about the Yankees competing in the now, really.
Yeah, they have the Justice Sheffield of the world, and those are the guys that I think, the Gleyber Torreses, that teams consider the number one types of guys to trade for. And those would be the number one targets. Outside of that, the Yankees are so stacked top to bottom in position players and hitters that it's just tough for any position players in their farm system to really have much of a future right now. And obviously in the offseason, they are going to try to stick around that threshold, that luxury tax threshold, but they can always go out and spend money as well because they're the Yankees. So I just think that these guys that Cashman gave up, it's kind of brilliant. You have this stash of minor leaguers that teams want, but you didn't end up giving up really any of them, of the really significant ones, to get these two deals done.
Well, and then kind of touching on that, but transitioning to your New York Mets, Samir and I doing our homework, we know you're a big Mets fan, and they're at a stage now when I don't want to call it a rebuild. I mean, it effectively has become a rebuild. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of turnover in the front office with the Mets, kind of having that GM by committee right now. But obviously the talk around the team the last couple of weeks, really the last month and change, has been about guys like Noah Syndergaard, guys like Jacob deGrom, what to do with those players given their level of talent, but given the lack of talent that's supporting them right now. I mean, everyone talks about Jacob deGrom and how every outing it seems he throws a gem, and every outing it seems he gets either the no decision or a hard luck loss. Are those players on the move at this deadline? You made note of it with the Yankees there, just kind of talking about how there's not really that number two available. I mean, obviously the Yankees and Mets don't really do deals with one another, but just in general, do you get the feeling that deGrom and Syndergaard are kind of stuck in limbo right now, or is there a move coming on the other side of town in New York?
I think that Mets fans, I should say this, I think Mets media or New York media wants to trade deGrom and Syndergaard way more than the Mets actually do. I think it would be very difficult for the Mets brass to ever help out the Yankees, especially seeing that the Yankees, it could be the final piece that they need to get to the World Series.
Right.
And I don't think the Mets are willing to do that, to watch their crosstown rival, help them get to the World Series. I also think that, at least from my standpoint as a Mets fan, I don't want to see the Mets pull apart the only strength of the team that they have, which is starting pitching. I mean, right now, the best player on the team is Jacob deGrom. And yes, that gets you the most back in return. But as any Mets fan knows, we've had prospects that were supposed to be great and never panned out. And so to finally have a prospect like deGrom and like Syndergaard, who not only panned out but became stars, I don't want to see those guys go for anything. To me, you go into 2019 knowing that the one strength you have is the rotation. And at that point, if you fortify the bullpen, at least then you have the pitching. And you have to figure out the hitting, and obviously there's a lot of holes there. But I would rather not see them make a deal and trade away deGrom or Syndergaard. And I think that the Mets brass also probably says that unless they're knocked over, they're not going to trade them, because the Mets already are now having trouble with their fan base, selling tickets, filling up the stadium, because this year has been such a disaster. Do they really want to go into next year having then also traded two of their best players? And then really nobody's going to show up to the ballpark. I don't see it. I think those two guys end up staying as a Met.
I agree. I just don't see the Mets, especially because they're so tied up in the next couple of years of different contracts, whether it be Cespedes, Todd Frazier, and Jay Bruce. I just don't see the Mets completely tearing it down. I can just very well see them kind of running it back with the same squad and trying to make improvements from within, basically, instead of tearing down their two strengths. But moving on more into the Mets, Yoenis Cespedes, man, he's been injury prone the last couple of years. Really, he's had some kind of injury controversy ever since after that World Series run, rather in 2016. I remember he was golfing when he was injured, and Mike Francesa went on a rant about that. So that's how it stuck with me, because anytime he goes on a rant, it was something big. And just also this season, the two heels they need surgery on, that's gonna sideline him 8 to 10 months. Basically, with his injuries and where the Mets are going, what is his future like in the Big Apple?
It's tough to say, Samir, because the Cespedes deal at the time, I thought it was the right move. He had come off of a couple of monster seasons, namely the 2015 season. He was the most important piece of the puzzle of getting them over the hump into a World Series. And obviously Daniel Murphy was red hot and the pitching was very good. But you have to remember, that Mets team really didn't catch fire until they traded for Cespedes. And so he was the catalyst. He was the big bat that they really have not had in years, in decades maybe. And
since Piazza,
when he came up as a free agent, I thought the right move was re-signing him. And I really, everybody talked about how they didn't have any money and that Madoff had robbed them blind, and so they weren't really going to be in the market for Cespedes, and they were going to have to go on the cheap. And here was a $110 million deal to Cespedes, and you said, wow, they spent the money. This is great. They actually went, and they went back for it. And now you look at that deal 2 years later, and it looks like a nightmare. It's just an absolute disaster because of the heel surgery. But at the time, I can't be a revisionist historian here and tell you that I knew it was going to be bad. I thought it was going to be good. My fear is that this is Yoenis Cespedes, that the next 2 years under contract after this one, because he's going to be done for this one, is just going to be injury-prone, aging slugger that can't ever get his power swing back and is never a lethal part of the offense ever again. And that would be really depressing, because at one time he could have been the toast of New York. But look, it's on the table, and I just don't think anybody really knows what Cespedes is going to be from here on out, because we've seen him at the highest highs and now the lowest lows. He is not a guy that keeps himself in good shape. He's not a guy that's going to be, highly motivated if the team is out of it. He's not going to be a guy that you always have on the same page. But when he's locked in and healthy, the guy is one of the best power hitters in the National League. So if he's really healthy and the Mets are competitive, could he come back and hit 30 home runs? I'm not going to put it past him. But you just, at this point, who the heck knows who Yoenis Cespedes is from here on out?
Exactly. And having said all that, assuming this is pretty much the end of Cespedes in New York, or if he kind of comes back and doesn't perform at the level he's capable of, will he be looked at fondly in the history of the Mets organization? Like, the guy that kind of came in was the guy that took him to the World Series for the first time in 15 years and had that cool armband, like that guy that you can kind of get behind. Is he going to be looked as that kind of guy, or somebody who just came in, kind of stole money, and only had like a very short but amazing stretch with the Mets, and will kind of be booed looking back at his time in New York?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's largely going to be negative, because had he just left as a free agent after 2016, then everybody would have just remembered the fond times, the good times, and that would have been going to the World Series, and then 2016 and getting to the playoffs yet again, the one-game playoff. But now, because they're not going to be able to trade this contract, he's going to be with the Mets for the next 4 years, or at least, for 4 years from the time that he signed it. I think they could end up becoming a real villain. I think he could end up becoming a real punchline that everybody forgets about 2015, and everybody just remembers the final 4 years that were such a disaster, because that's going to be the last taste in everybody's mouth. It's a really good question. I mean, if Cespedes can come back and have, at the end of this contract, 1 or 2 really good years, maybe he can salvage how we remember him. But, man, right now it's so negative, it's just hard to believe that there will ever be a point in time where Mets fans really, truly embrace him again.
Damon, I kind of want to switch gears a little bit here. I mean, Samir mentioned Cespedes' neon green sleeve. I mean, the other green in town, the New York Jets, are starting to get. They're reporting today to training camp, and the Jets and Giants are both kind of getting things going here. And in their respective camps. I'm fascinated because in your career, it seems that you've been bouncing around to a lot of these different markets, especially in the AFC East, covering a variety of sports. But, just in terms of, let's start with the Jets. I mean, they're in a division that is kind of, it's very awkward dynamic because it's obviously the New England Patriots division so long as 12 is wearing 12 and suiting up every Sunday. But, in terms of just the overall dynamic, I'm not a Jets fan or a Giants fan, but looking at the Jets off season, adding Sam Darnold, adding some of the pieces that they've added and some of the receivers they're getting back, is there true? I mean, I'm almost of the opinion that the Jets are the second best team in that division, with Buffalo kind of rebuilding their offense and the Dolphins just kind of listless a little bit. I mean, is there optimism? Is there cause for enough optimism? Maybe not for playoffs this year for the Jets, but at least to be a step above what they've been the last couple of years?
Well, it is kind of amazing when you look at that division, the idea that the Jets, without a quarterback right now, could be the second best team in the division, which just goes to show you how wonderful it has been to be a Patriot, knowing that every year for almost 20 years you didn't really have a true rival in the division. But it's a really interesting question. Who the second best team in that division is, I don't know. I mean, because had the Bills held on to Tyrod Taylor after going to the playoffs last year, I mean, I think you could say that they would be, but obviously they're going through a real change at quarterback, and having drafted Josh Allen, you just don't know. The Dolphins, I think listless is a good adjective, but at the same time, they've had decent talent down there, and they go to the playoffs 2 years ago as a wild card. And I actually think Ryan Tannehill could be poised for a solid season. Not a great season, but a solid season, because last year was lost to injury, and he was just starting to get over that hump 2 years ago before he was injured in Week 15. Right. But for the Jets, I really think that this is not about trying to win as many games as possible. I think this is trying to set yourself up for the future this year, because Sam Darnold is the franchise now. He is the future. You've now drafted 2 or 3 drafts in a row, which has been about youth, and you're trying to turn over the roster. And I think that for the most part, the Jets have done a pretty decent job doing that, but I just don't know if it equates to wins this year because of the quarterback position. So I wonder if it's really a true Jets season when they could be 3-3 after 6 games and turn the ball over to a rookie quarterback. And if they do that, then they're not trying to win 8 or 9 games. Then they're just trying to get the feet wet of a rookie quarterback. So it's a really interesting time in Jets land. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, I don't think it's a playoff season. I would be surprised if they're even 500 or above this year. But I think that Sam Darnold was the right move. I think he fell into the Jets' lap. I think that's exciting. And I think in a lot of ways, just him getting some snaps this year, if he gets some starts by the second half of the season, that in and of itself, as they build a young core, might be what it takes, because if the Patriots window is only Tom Brady's, the final couple of years of his career, maybe the Jets can plan themselves into, in the few years that it takes for Brady to eventually retire, maybe the Jets are the team in this division that is built to the point in time where they can then wrestle control of the division away from the Patriots once number 12 retires.
Now, switching gears to the Giants side of things, man, let me just start off with saying that last year was awful. Ben McAdoo, get him out of town. They did. I'm so glad. How he disrespected Eli Manning, man. That was a mess. Just everything around the Giants last year. But now heading into this season, I have more reason to be optimistic, because we drafted Saquon Barkley. We've needed a running back ever since pretty much Tiki Barber retired. Sure, Brandon Jacobs, Ahmad Bradshaw, they had a little bit of a good run during that era. We got 2 Super Bowls, but that was largely on the Giants' defense and Eli Manning stepping up in the big spot, and a couple of great catches by David Tyree and Mario Manningham. That certainly helped, but heading into this year, they've improved their offensive line. They got Nate Solder from the Patriots, and Will Hernandez coming in, just kind of revamping that offensive line and getting a healthy OBJ back and a new coach in Pat Shermer. Where do you see them going, Damon? Do you see them being a much better team than last year, or just only making like maybe an incremental improvement?
Well, it's hard to imagine they could be any worse, right, Samir? They were 3-13 last year, and as you mentioned, the Eli decision to not start him and to start Geno Smith instead was a disaster. Everything that McAdoo touched seemed to turn into dust. I mean, everything that they did last year was just a total nightmare. So they've got to be better than 3-13. But I think the idea that just adding a couple of rookies like Saquon and Hernandez and getting, a new coach in there fixes everything, it might be a bit of a pipe dream. I had Carl Banks on the show the other day, and Carl said, you don't just go from 3-13 to Super Bowl contenders by changing your coach and drafting a rookie running back. And he's right, and that's a guy that has won 2 Super Bowls, so he knows how hard that is. I think that the Giants can't help but be better. It would be impossible to be worse. And I think Saquon really helps because he helps take pressure off of Eli, thus taking pressure off of Odell Beckham, thus taking pressure off of the pass blocking on the offensive line. They added Nate Solder, they add Hernandez. Things should be better on offense. But 3-13 is still 3-13. And even if they make a 5-game leap, that's still only 500. So I think the Giants need way more consistency. And we've also got to see if Pat Shermer is a legitimate head coach. I mean, sometimes year one of a head coach in the NFL is great because new blood comes in, the guys respond, and they're energized. But sometimes it takes a while for a new head coach to find himself. And I'm interested in this because I think Pat Shermer in some ways has slid under the radar. There's such a bad taste in Giants fans' mouths because of how bad McAdoo was that I think they were just willing to just go for anybody. And Shermer is anybody. But I really need to see if Pat Shermer is a legitimate head coach in the NFL. And, there's going to be eyeballs on him right away because it's New York City.
Absolutely. Coming into New York City is never an easy task for a new head coach coming in. Just ask Mike D'Antoni in New York, man. He didn't get enough credit, but now he goes to Houston. He's all of a sudden coach of the year.
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of guys like that have looked great elsewhere, but in New York they just couldn't get it done because there is pressure, there is scrutiny, there's not a lot of patience.
No.
That's the big thing in New York. If you don't win quickly, you get tossed out of the window quickly, and some guys, it'll take a number of years for them to really develop into a head coach, and that's what I'm talking about with Shermer. He doesn't. You don't get 3 or 4 years to learn the job. I mean, look, Ben McAdoo goes to the playoffs in his first year. By year 2, he's out of a job. So there's not a lot of patience, and Shermer's going to have to kind of prove that he's the right guy.
Especially with the New York media, they're relentless. If you make one mistake, it's going to be all over, all over social media, all over the paper, and, it'll turn into a circus.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's a media that has always been tough on the players and tough on the coaches and tough on the teams. I think that's, part of the reason that some of the teams have had such a tough time winning because they respond to the media criticism, and that means there's a lot less patience, and they don't kind of give things time to really grow and develop.
That was the big problem with Darren Williams in Brooklyn. He just couldn't handle that criticism, and his career really kind of spiraled downward because of that.
Yeah, there are guys that respond to being in New York and love the pressure and love the attention, and there are guys that just wilt. And definitely Darren Williams is one of those guys that just didn't have it.
Damon, my last question here for you, and it's just a kind of combination of the last 2 subjects here with the Jets and Giants, is and again, it circles back to this past offseason in the draft. I have no dog in the fight. I'm not a fan of either team. I'm I'm an impartial observer, if you will. But, given the Saquon Barkley move by the Giants, it made sense to everybody, and it's understandable. They're trying to make a push during Eli Manning's window. Whatever that is, how many years that is. But, I can't help but feel, and me being, I guess, not a great knowledge, at least I don't have a great knowledge of every throw or pass that Sam Darnold's ever thrown, but I'm still kind of stuck on the idea that the Giants, under their new front office there, went straight for Barkley when you possibly have a couple of franchise quarterbacks on the table in the draft. Granted, I'm basing a lot of that off the hype that was this draft class this past year in the NFL. Sam Darnold, of course, was right up there with some of those names at the top of the draft. My question is for you: do you think if the Giants are unable to win a Super Bowl before Eli calls it quits and kind of leaves them in a state of flux at the quarterback position, given how things are currently constructed, will they look back and kind of kick themselves for not drafting a guy like Sam Darnold, who, of course, we have to wait and see how he does in the Jets, and you talked about it before. He's going to be worked in slowly. But it is, again, my thing is if you have a chance to take a franchise QB, you got to take it, even as great a running back prospect as Barkley is. I'm just curious if the Giants will one day regret that decision.
Yeah, I was not a fan of the decision because I really liked Josh Rosen, and I think Rosen's going to be the best quarterback of this draft. And obviously, he was available up until number 10, where he went to the Arizona Cardinals. I think there'll be a lot of teams kicking themselves that they did not go after Rosen. And the Giants draft that high so rarely that I really felt like you needed to take advantage of that and try to go get yourself a franchise QB because Eli does not have much time left. So I really do believe that they missed an opportunity. They missed a window there to take advantage of that. Now, that being said, if they graded out all the quarterbacks and they really felt like, you know what, none of these guys are a safe bet, and we've got to go with a safe bet right now, and Barkley is the safest bet, I understand it. I can't argue with that if they graded out all the quarterbacks. I don't say just draft a quarterback just to draft one.
Right.
I think you got to draft the guy that you really like. But at the same time, I think Rosen was that guy. And I think Darnold and Josh Allen, I have question marks about the other guys, but I did think that, at least for Rosen, that was a slam dunk draft. But, I don't think Dave Gettleman's ever going to admit that because Gettleman is a very headstrong guy.
Yep.
I think he's very arrogant in some ways. He's defiant in the face of criticism. I don't think he'll ever admit that they made a wrong decision. And, look, if Saquon Barkley ends up being a perennial Pro Bowler, you can't really argue with it because if you get a perennial Pro Bowler who ends up in your Ring of Honor or something like that at the number 2 pick, it doesn't matter what position he is, then you drafted well there. But I just think that, the Giants had this perfect moment where they got 15 years out of Eli Manning, basically. They then drafted number 2. They never draft that high, and it was a quarterback-heavy draft. Man, that's a lot of things that break your way, and, I'd like to think you take advantage of them, but look, they didn't, and now there's a lot of pressure on Barkley to get it done.
Absolutely. And, Damon, you got time for one more question?
Yep, sure do, man. What do you got?
All right, my man. Switching gears to the NBA just for a minute here. The biggest news of this offseason, or one of the biggest news of this offseason, is the whole Kawhi Leonard situation, man. Being that he wanted out from San Antonio, how he's able to successfully ghost Popovich and the entire Spurs organization, rather. For the Toronto Raptors side of this situation, was it fair what they did to DeMar DeRozan?
Fair is an interesting term because it's still business, it's still professional sports, and it's hard to say that anybody owes anything to anybody when, DeMar DeRozan could have left as a free agent anyway when he wanted to. I mean, this is just what happens in professional sports. I do wonder, though, if it was a smart move by Toronto because they had a guy there that loved being in Toronto, that the city loved him, and was a 4-time All-Star. I mean, DeRozan was their best player for a long time. And they traded him away for a guy that you have no idea if he wants to be there. You have no idea if he's going to want to play for you. You have no idea if he's going to be coachable. You have no idea if he's just going to take his ball, go home, be miserable, and never play for you. And if that's the case, getting Kawhi back for trading away your franchise guy and getting a guy back in Kawhi that won't play for you, I mean, that just feels like a huge mistake. So I understand why Toronto did it. Kawhi is the best player in that deal. They got the best player in that deal. But if Kawhi plays 35 games or something and is miserable the entire time, and they've got to trade him at the deadline anyway, or he walks away and they end up the back for him, then is that a smart deal? I don't think so. So, it's one of those things where I understand the The upside is big. If you get Kawhi there, he loves it and re-signs. You've got one of the 5 best players in the NBA, and DeRozan wasn't that. But if he takes his ball and goes home, then he just got screwed. So it's kind of a high-risk, high-reward situation. And I do feel for DeRozan because he wanted to be there, and then ultimately he got screwed out of that.
Absolutely. I think you're very fair with your analysis on whether it was fair. It is a business, but given the fact that DeRozan just kind of meant a lot to Toronto, just kind of, I guess just puts a sour taste in a lot of the Raptor fan base and a lot of, casual or big fans of the NBA, just to kind of see a guy that pledged his loyalty to one organization and said, I want to be a Toronto Raptor for life. I want to win a championship with them, and I want to stick out my entire career with them. Instead of him in 2016, he could have very much have gone back to his hometown Lakers and follow in the footsteps of his idol Kobe Bryant and really, become the next biggest star and one of the biggest storied franchises in NBA history.
Yep, you're right about all of that. And in 2018, getting loyalty from a player to want to play for you is a big deal. We don't see that a ton. We see guys leave for the money all the time or leave for a better destination. So DeMar DeRozan wasn't that, and for that I have a lot of respect for him. But, you enter professional sports, you could be dealt at any time, so you kind of have to just be ready for it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you just can't let feelings get in the way of business. Isaiah Thomas has kind of taken his situation in Boston to heart. But Boston, to be honest with you, made the right move. But at the same time, a lot of people expect loyalty from the players and are harshly criticized when they leave their situations, like LeBron leaving Cleveland twice. He hasn't been as harshly criticized going to the Lakers this time, but in the past, athletes just get a lot of times just, hated on for leaving their situation. So I think there needs to be more of a little bit of accountability on both sides in this business.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Players have the right when they're a free agent to go wherever they want. They've earned that right, and LeBron obviously did, and Kevin Durant did, and the list goes on and on and on. And, it's hard because fans obviously are so passionate. They're so emotionally connected to their teams. And you love that. You want that. It becomes emotionally connected to the players as well. But, at the end of the day, if these guys do leave, you have to realize it's their right to leave. They've earned that right. It's collectively bargained. It's in their contract. So it's really hard to argue about it. We can argue till we're blue in the face about what these super teams mean and whether Kevin Durant took the easy way out or whatnot. But at the end of the day, he had the right to leave. And just by virtue of leaving in free agency, burning your jersey or defacing murals, or that stuff is just kind of idiotic.
Yeah, no, a lot of the time, I think LeBron James, his jersey burning was more popularized, but people don't realize that, honestly, on the subject of Toronto Raptors fans and Toronto Raptors, they were burning Vince Carter jerseys before LeBron James jerseys were being burned, and that didn't get nearly as much publicity.
That's right. We've had jersey burnings for a long time there. So it's part of the tradition now in the NBA.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, Damon, thank you so much for joining us today, man. Always a pleasure having a fellow Hudson Valley, Orange County guy on our show.
I think it's safe to say, Damon, if you're back in the area, we owe you a lunch. We really do appreciate you giving us some time here today, and it's great to hear from someone who has very similar roots.
My pleasure, guys. Like I said, I'm really thrilled that you asked me to come on. You reached out to me. It's exciting to talk to a bunch of young up-and-comers from Section 9 in the Hudson Valley, Orange County. So you guys keep doing what you're doing. Forget lunch. Buy me a beer. That's what I'm really into.
All right. We'll get you a beer, man.
Or a cider. In Warwick, we have a ton of nice cideries. So I will catch you in Orange County. Anytime you guys need anything, please let me know. Happy to help out, man, and keep doing what you're doing, guys.
I appreciate that, Damon. I do a lot. Mike Francesa and all paid it forward to you. Now you're paying it forward to us. So we really appreciate that.
I appreciate you guys asking, man. Keep it going, guys.
Thank you so much, Damon. We'll talk soon, man.
All right, guys. Be good.
You as well. That was Damon Amendolara, Warwick, New York native. It was so kind of him to give us a few moments, Tim.
Oh yeah, and then that's the best part of reaching this industry and breaking into it, or at least attempting to get into it. The people that are in it and that are willing to share some time and are willing to, give you the time of day is huge. I mean, I think you can say that about a lot of jobs in a lot of different fields, but when you're talking about sports media and talking about broadcasting, you having professionals who are willing to take time out of their evening. I mean, we're recording right around dinner time here, and,
Exactly.
and Damon is all for it. So we absolutely, if he comes to Warwick or Monroe, whichever, we will be for sure buying him a beer. And hey, I meant to ask him, and I'll have to follow up on this after the show.
We got his number.
Yeah, well, I think I'm almost positive now because I was doing my homework earlier today. I know Damon from seeing him pop up on the NFL Network. I interned at WFAN, which shares a floor with his employer, the CBS Radio. They're right next to each other, and I must have just been ignorant, not seen him, or maybe my shifts didn't line up with his. But either or, I'm thinking, just having seen some of his resume, he probably had the same high school communications teacher as I did, because on his website, thedashow.com, he has a little blog entry there talking about his interview with Mike Francesa all the way back in 1997. Damon was a high school senior, and the project requirements that he outlined are the ones that I had to do as well in a senior year communications class, and then he followed it up with what was that teacher's catchphrase, which was bingo bango. I think he might have added a bongo on there too, or the teacher I'm speaking of. I won't say his name for the interest of privacy, but if that's the case, that's too funny. And of course, it's a small world, and it's really cool to see that, and to, you never, I mean, if you live in a town, it can be, I mean, Warwick's decent sized town. I mean, its population isn't huge. I don't think it's quite as big as Monroe's, but it's about, I think last check, somewhere between 20 and 30,000 nowadays, and a lot of people are moving out because of the taxes. But it's cool. You never know who's working or who's from where you're from, and yeah, I mean, again, I've only gotten to the early stage of this industry, and I know you have as well, Samir, and sometimes you go to places and people are not interested in what you're doing, whether they're working with you or alongside you or in the same building, and you can be just dismissed. And when someone is willing to give you the time of day and give you an interview and take time out of their day to help you out, that's something that's truly appreciated. So again, can't thank Damon enough for giving us some time here this evening, really. And yeah, hopefully, I don't know, maybe down the line we'll have him back on, or if he's willing to do that again, and we can ask him more more questions about trade deadlines for the future or something.
I mean, if he's also back in the Warwick area, we would love to have him on live.
Yeah,
him sitting right between us. So I think that'd be cool. And
he's a busy guy, but yeah, man. I mean, I don't know if he still has family in the area or what, but yeah.
I mean, I don't expect that much from him. But I mean, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say no if that opportunity came up. But hey, if he's in this area, we owe him a few beers, to say the least. Because, absolutely. Everyone loves a nice beer after a nice conversation about sports. We can talk more about sports or about life in general. Damon, I'm sure he's got a lot of wisdom, being that he's been in this industry for a little while, and being from this area, kind of, he may have seen things in this area that we've never seen before. So it'd be kind of neat to pick his mind.
And just picking at some of the stuff he put out there. I can't say I really disagreed with any of it. I think he was fair. And I'm not saying that because, he was on. I think I'm in step with a lot of what he said. I think, I don't think there's really anything. I mean, granted, he's going to be a lot more knowledgeable than I am, but no, I was pretty much lockstep. I was really interested in his insight in terms of the Mets and their thought process, and it does seem, because there's this building frustration within the Mets fan base, I feel like. They're very divided as to whether or not to move those guys, and you heard him talk about it. Jacob deGrom, Noah Syndergaard, cornerstones right now for the Mets, because they're I mean, DeGrom hands down is the best player on the Mets, and when Syndergaard doesn't have foot, mouth, and whatever disease he has currently, thank God it's just a viral kind of infection and not something more severe. He's an extremely talented young player, but it's one of those, when you're in effectively what has become a rebuild, it is frustrating, and you're going to have a lot of opinions on which way to go, and it does seem like the Mets right now, without a sole GM in place, with Alderson's health issues, and may he hopefully recover from that, but it's, obviously even after that, it seems like they're moving in a different direction. Doesn't seem like between the three guys they have, Ricciardi, Rico, and Minaya, that they're set in terms of dealing a big piece. I think that's frustrating when you're a team struggling like the Mets are. I mean, I can attest to that in the hockey side of things, when trades don't happen, when you're trying to effectively rebuild. A team like the Buffalo Sabres, a very similar situation. You're frustrated as a fan base, but he does make the point. You're also potentially giving up your best two draws, your best two players that bring people to the ballpark. Yeah, absolutely. I think Brandon Nimmo's starting to enter that conversation.
Syndergaard's also been very marketable.
Oh, yeah. Great fan
You're losing a big portion of your fan base if you trade Syndergaard.
Fantastic social media presence, too. He interacts with the fans regularly there. He's got a great sense of humor. So, all those things. And I think, again, he brought in some great perspective on that Yankees, the two moves that they've made. And obviously, we talked about him with Zach Britton and Jay Happ, and those two, what they bring to the Yankees. And it is interesting. It does. I can see where he's coming from, and I hadn't thought of it that way previously, where it's almost like supplementing a number two starter, because you'd figure, okay, maybe Yankees have their ace in Luis Severino, and then you got two or three number three pitchers, and then who, God knows, with Sonny Gray. But, which he's pitching right now, or he's about to be pitching.
He's not pitching bad lately.
Well, last couple starts,
it was the Mets and Orioles, but just the fact that he's getting his confidence back,
right, and
to get him in a groove, and when he does reach a little bit of trouble, he's got that lockdown bullpen for him to really...
Well, what have we seen in the playoffs lately? I mean, you look at it, managers are not afraid to go right to the bullpen. It could be the third inning, it could be the fourth inning. If the team has a bullpen that's like the Yankees bullpen, or what we've seen in the Cubs and Astros in past years, that they're not at all afraid to go straight to the bullpen. And you kind of have to say, innings limit, not innings limit, because that's more a term for starters, but, bullpen workload to be damned. It's just... it's a matter of, hey, we got to win this game. Every game we have to treat like our last game. And of course, then you run into elimination games where that's the case. But, that is an interesting way to look at it, because now you think the Yankees rotation, Luis Severino at the top. You could say Tanaka or CeCe, 2 and 3 in a playoff rotation, either or. I mean, right now Tanaka's coming off his best start of the year, complete game shutout the other day. CeCe's been pitching very well. You hope that holds up given his age. And now that you've added J.A. Happ, he's effectively, I would say, your number 4 and a second lefty. And then Sonny Gray right now is your 5th, so you don't have to so much rotate between like a Luis Cessa or a Domingo Germán. Those guys.
Germán was actually hurt. I think he was pulling at his elbow today.
But, when he was up, it was kind of hit or miss, and it was one of those deals where...
I mean, he had 6 innings in his first start.
He did, and then he had some impressive stuff, and then he had some appearances that weren't as impressive. But, at the end of the day... it is, okay, you don't have, per se, a true number 2, but you have 2 or 3 mid-rotation guys to go to, and then you have a supreme bullpen. You have a bullpen that can eat innings. My only concern with that is they need to get more length out of their starters going down the stretch here. You can't overtax a bullpen in August and September, or you will be screwed come October. And like he said, in a one-game wild card, which is looking more and more like the case, still plenty of time left, but right now, the way Boston's playing, the Yankees have to assume they're going to be... They're obviously trying not to be, but going to be in a one-game wild card, that's a good chance. And in those situations, it is an elimination game for all intents and purposes. It's the Game 7 of the World Series. You have to treat every out as a major, major out. You have to treat every pitch and every at-bat as an extremely important at-bat. So, say Severino, who the last couple starts has been a little shaky, maybe he hits that like he did last year in the wild card. They pulled him. They got guys in right away. They were able to pull out the win. Now you have the weapons to do that. I mean, you have the weapons... And who knows, like Damon mentioned and others have mentioned, Justice Sheffield is the wild card as well. If he's not dealt here at the deadline for some starting pitcher we weren't expecting, he has been pitching really well in AAA. We've brought him up in past episodes. He's right there in Scranton. I'm trying to go see him next time I go down there, but I think he might be on the Yankees by then. But he might even give you some flexibility. You could potentially put him in the pen as your long arm. He's a lefty. You know, you have to. I always get the.
He can also kind of set the world on fire like Severino did in 2015.
And that's the other exactly, and that's
kind of burst onto the scene
Sonny
down
Gray,
the stretch.
let's say Yankees don't make any more moves. Sonny Gray just relapses here for all intents and purposes. Goes back to the Sonny Gray he's been.
Yep.
Not that I'm rooting for that, but then you have potentially an ace in the sleeve with Justice Sheffield. Yes, he's a rookie, and yes, you have to be a little careful, but. Again, he's
sometimes
one of the top prospects.
Exactly,
and he's not an unknown. I mean, this is a guy they've traded for. I forget which deal it was in the 2016 trade for Bonanza. I forget which team. Was it the Braves they got him from? I can't remember.
Who?
Sheffield.
Indians.
That's right, Cleveland in the Andrew Miller deal. Yeah. He was highly regarded then. He's only kind of increased his stock in the last couple seasons.
He was in that Andrew Miller trade,
right? And that's a big guy they're probably going to be leaning on, within the next couple of months, if not next season. But at the end of the day, I mean, I beyond just the insight and the ability to talk to a professional like Damon, I do really like what he said. I mean, I'm like he was saying, Josh Rosen, I'm right in step with him there. No offense to your Giants, and I'm probably not the only one, but I'm not a Giants fan. I haven't met a Giants fan yet that doesn't like the Saquon Barkley pick. But again,
no, I love it. I think the Giants. I disagree with him about going 8-8. I think they're going to go like 10, I'd say 10-6.
Well, I think it's so hard because you're in a situation like he said. Dave Gettleman has a record of being a very headstrong GM. He says things that are kind of inflammatory when he's interacting with the media. I think he said something about analytics guys being nerds or some draft guys being nerds or this offseason, in the lead up and the build up to the draft. He's an old school guy football wise, and he's about getting smash mouth players and bringing in, and he's had a somewhat good experience.
The Giants also had a very good draft. Well, Hernandez,
exactly.
Previously mentioned Saquon Barkley. But they also got Kyle Lauletta, in the later rounds, and he could turn out to be a solid quarterback.
The whole QB running back debate is it is so much easier to find a running back. Granted, not necessarily of Saquon Barkley's talent level.
I mean, Saquon Barkley could be a top 5 running back of all time. He could very easily be. I'm not going to say the best yet because I got to see how he is, but he you never know. He could be the best.
Ask Barry Sanders, ask Adrian Peterson, and you can ask, I can't say Jim Brown because he won championships before the Super Bowl existed. But ask Adrian Peterson. You could ask guys who are great players, maybe not all-time greats, but LaShawn McCoy. You can ask all those guys who are great running backs stuck on teams without quarterbacks. They don't have a ring. That's my point is, yes, you have Eli, who I still believe in. I believe in Eli Manning.
He still has an arm. Even Mike Francesa has been saying, I don't evaluate him because based on the stats or his QBR. Rather, I value him based on his arm and his ability to throw, which he still has. In the last year, the Giants were stripped of all their best players. Yeah. OBJ was out for the year. Brandon Marshall, the time they did play was not effective, but he was out for the year. Sterling Shepard didn't really, he had an injury, and he wasn't quite the same player down the stretch. And
talented young receiver.
Yes, and the Giants did not have any running game to speak of whatsoever, and their offensive line was garbage. So Eli Manning was left with nothing last year.
I agree with you.
And,
I agree, but
that's why he wasn't good last year. But if you put a team around him, he's going to be good.
My approach would have been, if I'm the GM of the Giants, I take that franchise quarterback of the future at 2. And then I go, if my second round pick, Will Hernandez was a second rounder. You could have still taken him. There's other running backs. Darius Geis was available. Now there's a lot of talk that he was an idiot off the field. The Eagles said he tried to fight one of their coaches in a pre-draft interview, which is unheard of. Said it was the worst pre-draft interview they'd ever seen. Very talented running back out of college last year. A lot of people thought he'd go top 10, top 15. Didn't go till the end of the second round to Washington of all teams. And maybe he's your second round pick then, even if you're willing to work with the headaches. Now, maybe they're not. I understand that. I respect that. But at the end of the day, I think you could have still gotten a good running back talent and a good running back draft in the second round or even the third round, had a franchise quarterback, and put an offensive lineman in there as well. I think you could have come away with similar, not the same, because Barkley is an elite talent, but you get a franchise quarterback, which is so hard to find. Just like Damon said, he said, how often do you pick number 2, especially with the Giants? And now that they've upgraded their offense, they're not going to be bad enough to be number 2. Now, yes, I get it. If things go right, you can maybe make a magical run here and push for a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 seasons. I still have major questions about the defense, which is, concern for another day. But
I think I have full confidence that Jack Rabbit is going to come back to form.
That's fine.
Confidence in Landon Collins.
Eli Apple.
Eli
Apple
that was a bad locker room.
Cancer
That was a
last
bad
year.
locker room. I'm giving him another chance.
He's your number 2
I know,
corner.
but I'm giving him another chance. That locker room cancer.
William Gay is lining up to maybe be a nickel after that supplementary.
He'll be a good
I
presence
watched
in
a
that locker
lot
room.
of William Gay last 8-9 years of my
life.
life.
He's not going to be that good anymore, but he's
a nice veteran guy.
Yes.
He's not a good nickel cornerback. Not anymore. He wasn't.
But he's going to be there to kind of, maybe play a few downs and kind of be a mentor to these younger guys. I think that was a necessary pickup for the Giants.
And again, I don't think that. I think the Giants could push for a wild card spot this year. I do. The thing that works against them, I think, is they're playing the Eagles twice a year, and the Eagles are a juggernaut right now. Unless they have some major injuries, they got better, in my opinion, from last year. Yes, they lost a couple supplementary pieces, but they added some really good ones too. And Dallas, I think, sucks. Washington.
Dallas.
No, I'm not apologizing, John Krell, if you're listening. And then Washington is going to be kind of middle of the road, like they usually are.
Giants are going to be better than Washington.
Yeah, like I said with the Jets, you could
shot.
make a case the Jets might be the second best team in the NFC. The AFC East. You can make a case that the Giants could be the second best team in the NFC pretty easily.
With your point and with Damon's point about the Giants, not drafting a quarterback, I think the NFL is kind of moving towards a league where it's predicated on a good offense around the quarterback. You have good receivers, what the Giants have. You get good backs, with the Giants are getting. And then you have offensive lines that can protect and give quarterbacks time in the pocket. And then you get a solid quarterback that can kind of take charge. You get a Nick Foles type. Even not exactly a Nick Foles type. Nick Foles was able to fill in for Carson Wentz last year when Carson Wentz went down. The Eagles seemingly did not miss him that much. With Eli, he's still that veteran quarterback that can push for a Super Bowl this year if everything goes right. And, with the Giants in a couple of years, Eli will be done. But there's going to be a quarterback out there that's going to be looking for work. Look at the Minnesota Vikings. They got Case Keenum out of nowhere last year, and he was able to lead them to the NFC Championship game. And then, with Nick Foles, that's already been described, and just around in general, you don't really see these superstar quarterbacks winning multiple Super Bowls except for Tom Brady, and he's had a good system around him.
Roethlisberger, Eli Manning.
Well, those are 3, but Drew Brees only has 1 Super Bowl.
Fair.
Drew Brees has 1.
Aaron
Peyton Manning has 2, but Peyton Manning's second Super Bowl came when he was on the decline. Brock Osweiler may not have,
Manning also
may have rather been the deserving quarterback, and that was on the strength of his defense. So Peyton Manning, he did go to 4. I'll give you that. But he's only got 2 championships. I think the fact that having an elite quarterback is a little bit overblown, in my opinion. It may look good, on paper or for being a star, but honestly, for marketing wise, I think a wide receiver and a running back is much more powerful than a quarterback.
What you're saying, I think you're right in that if the rest of the team is there, you can win without an elite quarterback. That's been proven. But it's far, far, far easier to make up for deficiencies on your roster if you have a great quarterback. And Eli Manning, I think in his prime, is a great quarterback. I still think he's a very good quarterback, but I have questions about the Giants' pass rush. I have questions about their corners outside of Janoris Jenkins, and I have questions about their linebackers, in all honesty. They got Alec Ogletree, who should be an upgrade. B.J. Goodson's actually pretty solid. I like him. But, where's the pass rush? Where's that defense that totally quit on the team last year? Now, yes, Ben McAdoo, as you said, Ben McAdoo.
Yeah,
I can see that, but like Damon said, to go 3-13, like Carl Banks said to Damon, and Carl Banks is a good authority on New York Giants football. To go from 3-13 to Super Bowl, that's a large jump. Now, not saying it can't be done, and
Eagles finished under 500 the year before,
but I don't believe it was 3-13. I think it was 7-9, 6. I don't remember. Honestly,
that was just a messy team. Everything that could have went wrong, went wrong for the
Odell
Giants.
Beckham went down.
It's not like the Giants were 6-10 and a disappointing team. They were just awful because of what was surrounding the organization, with injuries, with dysfunction in ownership, and all that jazz. Right. So I think, honestly, bringing in these guys, OBJ and revamping the offensive line, there's going to be questions on defense, but I think having a new voice in Pat Shurmur, he still has got a lot to prove. That's fair on Damon to say that he's still got to prove himself as a coach, but having a healthy OBJ and Eli Manning back in the fold and back within good spirits is really going to rub off on the Giants very well. And I think, I'm not going to say write them off as being the Super Bowl champion yet, but I think they're going to be much improved. And, if Saquon Barkley is as good as advertised, he's really going to give that team a boost, which will help OBJ and Eli Manning. And, if they get hot at the right time, they'll be a force in the playoffs.
If the offense can carry the team, that's how they can make a run. And in the past, it's weird because in the past, it's been the defense that's really been the backbone. I mean, granted, yes, you had Eli doing his thing.
The NFL's changing a little bit, though.
Yeah,
it's becoming more offensive.
There's different. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying, in the Giants' past, the 2 rings they won against the Patriots, it's because their defense, though it wasn't great the second time, they still had a pass rush, and that's how you beat Tom Brady. But that's another point. My last thing with what Damon said, touching back on the Yankees thing, even though I know I talked about it, I just want to throw a couple numbers in there, Samir, that you and I were looking up before we got on. J-Happ, some interesting splits here for you. I'm just going to read them off in a row and process them as how you will. Versus the Yankees in his career, and this is, obviously no longer a threat for the Yankees to worry about. Okay numbers, 18 games, second most faced team he's played in his career. He has against the Yankees, 3.96 ERA, inflated in his last appearance against the Yankees, in which they shelled him. So prior to that, had some pretty solid numbers that looked even better. But 8-4, 18 games pitched. Most faced team in his career, the Boston Red Sox, 7-4, 2.98 ERA. So that's important because that's a team they're going to be facing more than down the regular season, yes, and probably in the playoffs. Against Cleveland, smaller sample size, 7 games played, 3-2, 4.19 ERA, and against the Houston Astros, 9 games played, 5-2, and a 3.46 ERA. So those teams right there for him. Now Zach Britton, 37 games pitched against the Yankees. The team he's faced the most in his entire career. He's pitched to a 4.06 ERA. So, the thing that worries me, Samir, and I am concerned. I like Zach Britton. I like the move. I don't have any issue other than this. At Yankee Stadium in his career, 17 games, 3 of them starts. So, take with what you will. Early in his career, Zach Britton was a starter, didn't work out. Orioles moved him to the closer role, did work out. So, a little bit of a stat inflation from his poor starts, the 3 he made at the beginning of his career. However, he had 14 games after those 3 starts at Yankee Stadium, and he has an 8.46 ERA. So that is concerning to me. And the weirdest part of that is he's only given up 2 home runs in Yankee Stadium. So I don't know if that's good or bad, because that implies that, maybe it was bad days, but to have 14 bad days, I don't know the ground ball stats, and that's on me to not know that off the top of my head in terms of his percentages. Zach Britton, to me, I think it's been said that he's a decent ground ball. He pitches to ground balls. He's having, he's always a decent strikeout rate, but not the top strikeout rate. He's not Andrew Miller. He's not Dylan Betances. He's not Aroldis Chapman. But he's a very good reliever.
Absolutely.
He's been a closer in his career.
He finished, in the Cy Young race 2 years ago, so...
Right. Oh, no, that's J-Happ. That's J-Happ. I'm talking about Britton.
I think Britton did, too.
Did he really?
I think he was, because he went perfect in save opportunities a couple years ago. So
okay.
I think he was also.
Okay, my mistake. I
think both of them were in the Cy Young.
And they've had their stretches. So and to finish off very quickly here on Britton, Boston, 32 games played, 3.28 ERA, and again those numbers largely inflated because of the first year of his career when he started 3 games at Boston, didn't go well. So again, as a reliever, he's been very good against Boston. He hasn't been great at Fenway, 5.40 ERA, so that's something to keep in mind in the playoffs. Again, teams change over time, so these aren't the be-all, end-all numbers because every year's a different team he's facing.
I think we got to take it with a grain of salt here because he's not going to be the same, he's not going to be relied on as heavily as he was in Baltimore. He's going to be in a stacked bullpen where...
He's going to be the lefty specialist.
Exactly. He's got Chapman, he's got Betances, he's got Green, he's got Robertson and Holder.
Holder's been phenomenal.
And Warren, they got. I don't know what's going on with Canely, but that's a different.
Yeah, he's still beat up. I think he's rehabbed.
I don't know what's going on with him, but
forth,
Britton's joining a stacked bullpen. I think that's going to help him a lot in terms of just being confident out on the mound and joining a team that can put up runs in a hurry whenever they're hot. If they rely a little bit too much on the home run ball, that's another topic though. But, joining the Yankees as opposed to having to carry more load in Baltimore, I think is going to be very beneficial for Zach Britton.
Now, the last MLB point, we didn't bring this up with Damon, but in one of the most bizarre things I can remember a commissioner doing, and that says a lot because Roger Goodell seems to do something stupid every year, or at least orchestrates with the owners something stupid every year. With Bud Manfred just out of the blue calling out Mike Trout and saying he doesn't, it's something to the effect of he doesn't act like a superstar. He doesn't, do the things a superstar does. I don't know where Bud Manfred's
I don't
been
know
the
where his
last
head is at.
7 years, what rock he's been sleeping under, but I can't think of a better representative of the face of baseball than Mike Trout in the last 4 or 5 years now. I'd say even longer. Since really he's been up. I mean, the guy came up the same day as Bryce Harper. And I always tell this story because it irritates my buddy to no end. My friend and I, it was my freshman year of college.
Yep.
Actually, Bryce Harper was with the Chiefs, Syracuse Chiefs, the AAA team with the Washington Nationals, so right down the street from where you and I went to school. And a couple buddies of mine were saying, hey, let's go down there while Harper's up. He was up for a week, and then he got called up. We didn't even get a chance to see him in AAA. I think he was on a road trip for most of that time, then got called up to the Nationals almost immediately after getting to AAA. Same day, Mike Trout goes up. Everyone talks about Bryce Harper. My buddy goes and adds Bryce Harper in fantasy baseball. He beats me to the punch. I'm so angry. I look at the wire and I see a little note on some guy, and I had heard of him before. I was just like, oh, who the hell is this?
Kind of how I was about Trout.
Mike Trout? Who's this guy? I'll add him. I mean, I heard good things. I looked up his scouting report. Yeah, he's like good Angels prospect, fine. The end of the day, oh my Lord, that was the greatest edition of my fantasy sports career. I don't think I won the championship in that league that year, but I damn well came. That league, I've gone to the championship in like 8. I was the Buffalo Bills times 2. I almost went, I think it was 6 or 7 years in a row to the championship. I won the first time, lost the rest of them. But in any case, Mike Trout has completely engulfed baseball. Not just Bryce Harper, who's had his great runs too, but Mike Trout is the be-all, end-all player in this league. He is five-tool, is I think not doing him justice. He has all the tools. He hits like few have ever hit in baseball. He's on historic tracks right now. If you want to go by that wins above replacement stat, he's on pace for some of the all-time greatest rankings in that. And he just, every time he plays, he steps on the field, he's a must-see guy. I don't know what Bud Manfred is thinking. Like, what does Mike Trout have to do? I really don't know. What does he have to do?
He's so low-key at the Baltimore Orioles game. He saw a little kid rocking his jersey at the game, sitting lower level. Mike Trout points him out without any hesitation. Here, kid, come play with me on the field. So he got to take batting practice with him, take part in pre-game drills and everything, and Mike Trout never asked for publicity on that. He never posted on Twitter or Instagram. No. Got a chance to meet a little buddy today in Baltimore. He had to join me for pre-game stuff. He just quietly did it for the goodness of his heart and gave a kid a lifetime experience. This kid's going to love Mike Trout forever. You don't see this in professional sports. You don't see a professional athlete going out there and really taking a few minutes out of their time to make a young kid's day. I can remember so many times when I was a kid, I wanted to meet an athlete or something, and I was so close to them. They would ignore me a lot of times. I was okay, I guess screw you as an adult. But, what Mike Trout
Roger Clemens did that to me.
Yes. You told me that story, man. Roger Clemens is a classless jerk. I mean, if that's who you want to represent your game, Rob Manfred, then go ahead. I'm a Yankees fan, but Roger Clemens is a jerk.
Yeah, and just very long story short, Roger Clemens spurned me for an autograph. I was next in line on an off day for him pitching in, I think it was 2002 or 2003, the only time I've ever had field-level tickets to anything in my life. He came up to our section. He knew a mom or something in the section. There was about 5 or 6 kids along the wall waiting for autographs. He gets through the first 4. I'm next. And he turns around, hugs the woman, and walks away. So I've always held that against him.
I would too. That's such a little kid wants an autograph from one of his heroes, and he just completely ignores him.
I mean, maybe they were calling him. I don't know. It was an off day for him. That's all I know. And I was frustrated. But in any case, I'm with you. I mean, how many times have we seen superstars in other sports, even baseball too? I mean, every sport. Come up with the wrong headlines.
Exactly.
Just for all the wrong reasons. And Mike Trout. I mean, unless Bud Manfred knows something we don't, and I don't think that's the case at all.
Maybe he wants Josh Hader to represent the MLB.
Oh God. The Brewers fans do.
Giving him a standing ovation. Man, you know what?
Talk about classless.
Talk about classless. You Milwaukee, I'm going to go on. Hot breeze alert. You Milwaukee Brewer fans make me sick. You're cheering against the guy. You guys are the same guys that have criticized NFL players for taking a knee to, protest police brutality against African Americans in our country. They don't do anything wrong. They protest a big issue in our country. And then this guy, he's 17 or 18 years old. I don't care how old he is. You do not use the N-word on social media. You do not say anti-gay stuff on social media. You don't do any of that. You're taught that when you're 11 years old, that you don't say certain things on social media. I remember when I had a MySpace, my parents said, don't say certain things. And I had to listen to them because I was raised properly. This guy, though, classless jerk. And then you Brewer fans, give him a standing ovation for overcoming what? Overcoming that his social media, his Twitter posts, his tweets from when he was 17 years old were leaked, and he handled it with, I guess, so-called class in the media. He did not handle it class. He did not look apologetic at all. And you're going to root for this guy? Man, I'm disgusted by you guys. You're the same city that had a police brutality case against NBA player Sterling Brown. Man, I'm disgusted with you, man. Disgusted by the display I've seen from the city of Milwaukee.
Yeah, and that I it's hard to fathom because look, there's you obviously you can root for a player and I don't understand why that warrants an ovation. Like you said, it's not like he was overcoming some adversity. Yeah, he was a kid, and yes, he should never have said it, but you know what? At the end of the day, you take your lumps, you go out there, you apologize, and you just go play baseball. And while he has no control over what the crowd does, look, to me, it just on the side note, it doesn't. Why? I don't get that. If I go on a profane tirade on Twitter tomorrow and I go back to work, I don't expect a standing ovation. And I'm not saying Josh Hader did, but I'm not expecting to be celebrated as
I'm not faulting Josh Hader on getting the ovation.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, and I know I agree with you. I don't it's called a sign of the times or what have you, but they're
honestly just out there trying to piss off,
it's just
liberal people, which this should not be a political issue. This should be an issue of anti-gay and anti-diversity and
and you're right, and I don't see any reason why it has to be that way. Like, again, you don't have to, like, if you're a Brewers fan, I'm not saying you can't ever cheer when the guy gets a strikeout or anything like that. I'm not trying to dictate how you root for somebody, but there's no reason in reference and in the direct result of all that uncovering of old tweets and stuff. It's okay. It's not a celebration. This wasn't an accomplishment. To walk back out there again. He's getting paid millions of dollars to do it. And, so at the end of the day, I'm with you. I don't understand why we have to do that. And again, it is pretty contradictory. It is a contradiction. When you're going on and on about respecting the American flag and respecting the anthem and not kneeling or not showing any protest. The American flag stands for diversity. It stands for, a diverse country that comes together. Give me your tired, give me your poor. That's all part of the fabric of this country. And if you're so into that, why are you cheering for a guy whose racist tweets went viral? Granted, again, yeah, he was younger, and yes, he should never have said those things. I'm with you there 100%. But that again, that's if you're gonna cheer for that, and then viciously come after these people who are protesting something that's happening to someone within their community and their race, it's shocking. It's shocking, and you know what? It's hard to be shocked nowadays. It's just the way things go. Yeah. But yeah, no, at the end of the day, circling back here to Mike Trout. I don't know.
He's one of the classiest guys out there.
I don't get why Rob Manfred has this issue, and maybe he was just having a bad day or a bad mood, or maybe Mike Trout.
But the difference is though,
did Mike Trout steal his girlfriend? Rob Manfred's a lot older than Mike Trout, but I don't get it. Or maybe he's dating his daughter or something. I don't know. I just
don't think the NFL or the MLB have good relations between the commissioner and their players. Whereas in the NBA, Adam Silver is on their side.
Well, I don't know if you've been seeing some of that. There's been a lot of speculation that come the next CBA, which I forget what the year is. Off the top, it's soon. It's the next 2 or 3 years. CBA ends, and there's going to be a very good chance that there's going to be a lockout and potentially a strike. In that players this year were really rattled by the lack of free agency spending. And I don't fault teams for that. It seems that more and more data comes out about players after they turn 30.
Analytics.
And all that, and I think that's a huge part of it. So I can't fault teams for that, but there's a lot of talk about all these different things that owners colluded. They got together and said, hey, don't offer this amount. And I don't know if that can be proven, and I don't know if that goes on, whether or not. But there's a lot of divide right now between ownership and the players' union. So that could be a deep divide we're heading for. And I think I want to say after 2019-20. I think that's the year after. I think it might be 2020-21 when that CBA would have either be renewed or strike. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously those things get resolved, but at what cost? I mean, are we going to see a season that's lost? Are we going to see half a season that's lost? Last time I can remember the CBA becoming a big issue was, I think, the early 2000s, middle 2000s, where they came pretty close to the deadline and got a deal done. I can't remember, to be honest with you. I'm probably missing one in there because it's usually within every 10 years. But in any case,
yeah, of course.
That's, we'll have plenty of time to digest that when we're still a ways out. But I was reading, I think it was The Athletic, which I love, by the way. I love that.
Yeah, Athletic is good.
If you haven't subscribed, I would recommend it. I'm not trying to be plugging for Athletic here. We're not getting paid by them or anything. I was reading it the other day, and I can't remember if it was Rosen. I can't remember who wrote it. I have to go back and look. But yeah, in any case, baseball might have some storm clouds on the horizon. So we're hopefully that'll progress will be made. But I know there's.
I just don't know what Mike Trout has to do right for him.
What else he has to do?
Yeah, he's the near perfect athlete. Like. Honestly, it's just an issue with Rob Manfred. He doesn't have good relations with his players. So, Bud Selig wasn't any good. Rob Manfred's not any better. So, if you can't appreciate greatness, then that's on you. He doesn't need to make himself more marketable. He needs to just be himself. He needs to live the life that he wants to live. And if he doesn't want to be all about the glitz and glamour, that's not his problem. That's yours.
Absolutely, and I think that's well said. Now, I want to circle back to the NBA because we talked. We got some insight there from Damon.
Yeah.
Kawhi and Toronto. I'll just give my thoughts real quick as again an impartial observer to these two. I do fault Toronto here just with it. It seems like a bet that wasn't worth taking. I mean, right off the bat, you heard Kawhi is initially was not interested. Now there's some wavering, saying, "Oh, maybe I will." But if you go into a deal, and it was my understanding it was part of the deal, and it is because it's a protected pick, if you have to protect a pick to see whether or not a guy comes to play for you, why are you making the trade?
And you're giving up a guy that's professed his loyalty to your team in a league that it's rare you see that.
I see the understanding where, okay, you think that Kawhi Leonard's going to put you over the hump in the East because LeBron's gone and he's been your nemesis in the East for a while and he's been everyone's nemesis in the East forever since he's been there. But no, I don't think it's a good gamble. I think they're trying to really bet on the fact they can sell Kawhi on Toronto. It's a beautiful city, I get that, but it's just why are you taking this bet when all you've heard all off season from everyone involved? It's not just the media. You're hearing it from people who are involved in both sides of the negotiation, whether it's the Spurs, whether it's agents. You're hearing turmoil there with Kawhi, and you're just hearing everything about this guy is like, why would I want to deal with this guy? Yes, he's a supreme talent, but why am I giving up a premium for him? Why am I giving up my franchise player draft picks and prospects for a guy who has just, for lack of a better word, has just been a douche all offseason? Now, look, I understand Kawhi is entitled to. I mean, granted, he was under contract with Spurs, but he's entitled to when he hits free agency, go play for who he plays for.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't know all the things that go on behind the scenes. I mean, he and Popovich seem to just have come to a clash. And look, I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest coaches of all time, and if you can't be coached by him, I'm afraid if I'm Toronto, I mean, why am I bringing that into my room? I mean, DeRozan's I get it. I mean, I get the thinking behind it, but I would say there's too many things that popped up between the time that, the Spurs are probably not going to be able to reconcile this relationship to the actual trade being made. Too many things popped up to me that if I'm a GM, I say, no way. I mean, unless the price is real low, why am I giving up my franchise player right now? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But why am I giving that up for a guy who's probably jetting I mean, more than probably, is very likely going to leave after one season? And I don't know if the Toronto Raptors, I know they haven't gotten to the NBA Finals, but I don't know if they realize who's waiting for them in the West. And more than likely, it's either the Golden State Warriors or a supremely loaded Rockets team. And there are a few others, of course. But if you're playing the Warriors, is Kawhi Leonard really going to put you over the top? I mean, to me, I think, yeah, I mean, like, and again, Damon alluded to it. it's a sport, it's a business. Both sides have every right to, the Raptors have every right to trade DeMar DeRozan. So in that regard, it's fair. But to send him out for a guy who's very likely going to be caustic in your locker room, or at best is going to be kind of lukewarm to the idea of staying there, and sending your franchise guy who's only 28, is going to be 29 this year. To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I pretty much agree with everything you said there, Tim. I think it was disrespect on the Masai Ujiri's part of trading his franchise player without there being any real communication. Ujiri's told DeRozan, man, we're gonna keep you in the fold. We plan on making you a Raptor for life, pretty much. Like you're not going anywhere. He told him that 2 weeks earlier, and then before you know it, DeRozan was shipped off to San Antonio, pretty much stabbing him in the back. And Ujiri, I guess apologized in the press conference.
A breakdown in communications, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's just, I get it. You're running a business. You got to do what's best for your team, but you have to profess a little bit of loyalty to your franchise player. DeRozan came in there, a homegrown kid, developed through the years and experienced the highs and lows of being a Toronto Raptor. When he was drafted into Toronto, I mean, that team was okay because he had Chris Bosh there his first year, but after Chris Bosh left, that team was nowhere near good. They were pretty bad, actually. And then they brought in Kyle Lowry, just expected to be kind of a rental, not a big part of the Toronto Raptors' future. But Kyle Lowry himself developed into an all-star player. Him and DeRozan formed an inseparable bond in social media or in the media. You see them doing interviews together, some of the looks they gave each other. That was true brotherhood right there. And then being part of that team that kind of took people by surprise and rose to the top of the Eastern Conference and ultimately getting the first seed in the Eastern Conference, albeit they got swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers in this year's postseason. LeBron just had their numbers. So given the fact that LeBron James finally left the Eastern Conference, don't you think it would have been a little bit fair and a little bit decent to run it back one more time with DeRozan in the fold and give yourselves a chance to get to the finals against the likes of the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers? Or did you think it was more right to trade for a guy who could very well be a rental? You could very well, have him dealt by the trade deadline so that you don't lose him for nothing. And, just somebody who's not going to profess any it's the same loyalty that DeMar DeRozan did. I don't know, like Tim said, I don't know what truly went behind the scenes between Kawhi and San Antonio. We're going to have to wait and see what happens between the two parties, but I just think it was a stab in the back by Toronto management, and I will also say this even further. For you Toronto Raptor fans out there that were booing Vince Carter throughout these years for wanting out in Toronto in 2004, shame on you. I mean, sure, you can be upset that he left. I'm glad that you guys came around to, accept his apology or kind of move on and get over the heartbreak that Vince Carter left behind in Toronto. But, once you show that same anger towards Raptors management for not keeping their players in the fold, keeping those who profess the loyalty that Vince Carter or Chris Bosh didn't quite possess to your franchise. Show that anger to Masai Ujiri and the Raptors organization. Sure, you're getting Kawhi Leonard, wait and see, but if he leaves, then I better see riots around the city of Toronto because you guys gave Vince Carter absolute hell after he left the Toronto Raptors and went on to the New Jersey Nets. Granted, Vince Carter had the last laugh many of the times when he was on the Nets in the playoffs, and the only time you guys have, between the Nets and the Raptors, they've ever played each other, Vince Carter won as an underdog. And Vince Carter also gave some of his prime years to the Nets that you Toronto Raptors fans could have had. And you know what? You guys could have had that same prime, those same prime years of Vince Carter if you didn't turn your back on him and start questioning his loyalty to the team. And Toronto, he made a couple of demands, I will say that, but they were reasonable demands. He demanded Toronto management to hire Julius Erving as the general manager of the Toronto Raptors because Vince Carter and Julius Erving are very close. And he needed a change. He needed to he needed to change in Toronto, get things on the right path, and to really contend for a championship. He had Chris Bosh there, up and coming. So you guys could have easily put together a team to make Toronto an Eastern Conference contender back in the day. You let Tracy McGrady walk, and he turns out to be a superstar. And then you want Vince Carter, I think, specifically wanted Steve Nash and Jamal McGlure, both of whom were big time players back then. Jamal McGlure less so, but Steve Nash, we obviously know the legacy he left on the NBA. So if you were able to get those two players, add in Vince Carter and then an up-and-coming Chris Bosh, that Toronto Raptors team could have done absolute damage, maybe even win a championship in the NBA back then. But I think Toronto was just mishandled their entire organization with Sam Mitchell being the coach. He did not know how to run a team very well, at least when Vince was there. I think they did come to blows, but I don't know the story behind that. But, that I'm going off on a little tangent here. I think pretty much the moral of the story here is that you can't expect players to stay loyal to an organization that in the past has shown an unwillingness to build a winning team around them and keep those who are loyal when things are finally starting to actually look good around.
Now, to touch on one of the things you said in there, and I'd also kind of alluded to it, and I think what Ujiri is looking at is all of a sudden this stud from the Western Conference is available who plays regularly against the Golden State Warriors. He's had some performances against the Golden State Warriors. I can go get this guy. I already think I'm winning the East. And I can give up a guy who I can't win the East with, so to speak. Like you said, I'm with you in that why not give that team that hasn't been able to get around LeBron, now that he's gone, why not give them an opportunity? And I understand you're always trying to improve your team. But, again, to get someone who is totally bought in, I would say the face of your organization right now. And,
absolutely.
And to trade him for, again, a guy who very likely won't be bought in and is thinking about the contract he's going to sign in 12 months. To me, because next question on here is are the Raptors a threat to win the East? I think they'll be a playoff team, obviously. But I think Boston's going to beat them. I think it's Boston or Philly. Because, it's just a matter of you just took a major piece of your team to get a major piece who, even if you're going to, again, make a run, and look, I make jabs at them all the time just in jest because I don't like any other sports teams. Toronto is a beautiful city.
Absolutely.
And it's
never been.
I've never been. I've seen it. I've been across from it.
It looks beautiful.
And I've done way back in the day. I had to do research reports in high school, middle school. And I picked some landmarks in Canada. I've done some homework on there. I've seen all kinds of things. I know some Canadians. Beautiful city from everything, and I really do want to visit one day. But at the end of the day, to try to sell a guy who's fixed either on LA or a city with somewhere in the, I mean, we talked about it. Kawhi has roots in LA, and there's other teams in the West that can make a pitch. I just don't see. I don't see it working out. I can't. I think they won't win the East. I think they'll be a contender. I think they'll be a team that probably goes a round or two in. But at the end of the day, Boston being the team that they are and as well coached as they are, and Philadelphia being the young, talented team that's building every year now. Somewhere Sam Hinkie is smiling because a lot of what his process was, despite how painful it was for a lot of fans and teams and players on the team, seems to actually be somewhat bearing some fruit. Now, it's not all him, Colangelo, Twitter accounts or not, had some roles here or there. But, again, I digress. I think I think Boston and Philly are both ahead of them in terms of going into the Eastern Conference next year as far as favorites to win it.
I think I pretty much agree with you right there. Toronto, yeah, pretty much. They'll be a team that makes the playoffs in the East, but I don't really see them as they can maybe take the Celtics or 6 to 7 games, but ultimately I think both teams are just going to be too deep for Toronto to really make a push.
And then here's a big question for Toronto. I mean, you made mention to both there, and obviously Vince Carter started in Toronto, had his career begin there, and DeMar DeRozan now had a little bit longer a tenure, and I believe is the all-time games leader now in Toronto Raptors
all-time
history.
games and points.
Yep, and the question becomes, who was the better player in Toronto? Now, it's hard to argue with a player who averaged almost 4 more points a game than DeRozan and Vince Carter. But I will say, DeRozan did put up some impressive stats on the leaderboard beyond just that. He has the minutes in the games. He has the free throws. I think his steals, I believe, were top 10 on the all-time list. Now, on the flip side, Vince Carter's top 10 in blocks. So if you're going strictly from a statistical category and a statistical presence, statistical reference, it's hard to argue against DeRozan, but the efficiency favors Vince Carter. In less time, he was able to accumulate a higher average in several categories. And you know what? I can't pretend to know enough about the Toronto Raptors to say who had the bigger moments, who had the bigger game-winning shots. I don't. I really don't. I haven't been that close an NBA fan, unfortunately, and that's something I'm working on changing. But at the same time, it's interesting because I think the legacy question is going to kind of decide this. Neither of them was able to go out there and win a championship with the Raptors. Both of them were multiple-time All-Stars. I think Carter was an All-Star every single time he was.
I think other than his rookie year.
Other than his rookie year.
Yeah.
So, there's both of them boast a ton of statistical achievements. Neither was able to win the whole thing. You can speak probably better than I can to who had the bigger moments, and they probably, I would say both have had a fair amount. But, to me, it's a toss-up. I think given that, Carter's gone on and played an extremely long career, and I think if we're talking all time, if you have to weigh that as a tiebreaker, you probably lean Carter. It's tough for me. It really is. Again, I'm not familiar enough with the Raptors to say definitively. Again, it's tough. I would almost lean DeRozan just because he was able to last longer there. And that's not necessarily, the be-all, end-all, but it's hard. It really is hard. I mean, they're both fantastic players. Obviously, if you're talking whole careers, it's a different conversation. But I would lean DeRozan just because he, again, and you can see how much he wanted to stay there. You could see how much he wanted to be there. And for him to be this hurt by a trade, I think speaks to the value not only that he brought to the franchise, but what that franchise meant to him. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. Did Carter leave via free agency?
No, he got traded.
He did get traded. Okay, so
I don't know, one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history. But here's why, Tim, bringing up fair points about DeRozan being a Raptor, professing his loyalty. Mm-hmm. I do respect that a lot. However, we cannot deny the impact that Vince Carter's had on the city of Toronto.
I have a feeling you might pick Vince. We gotta bring some. I can't really.
Nah, man, but
debate.
but I mean, DeRozan, he has more playoff success. He has more points per games. Not points per game. More points. More points in Raptors history, more games played and everything. But that's because he's had a more stable roster around him. He's had Kyle Lowry. He's had, a bunch of other pieces kind of, if I can go back. I mean, Jonas Valanciunas has been solid. Solid center, not bad. And, Toronto's also had Patrick Patterson, who was solid for a little while, Lou Williams. They've had a plethora of solid players around DeRozan in Toronto, but with DeRozan, he's played more games than Vince Carter has in a Toronto Raptors uniform. That's why his points are higher than Vince on the franchise scoring list. And I did the math. DeRozan only averaged, 14 more points and more games played than Vince Carter did in his time in Toronto. 14 points per game is not enough for me to really hold weight in terms of more the value to the team. Whereas, Vince Carter, he's already had a movie out about his time in Toronto, The Carter Effect. Vince Carter helped bring basketball to Toronto for a little while. Basketball was the most popular sport in Toronto over hockey, and that's big because hockey is Canada's main sport. And the fact that these guys want to play basketball instead of hockey during Vince Carter's time, that speaks volumes. Vince put on a show every night in Toronto with these amazing windmill dunks, with these amazing performances, scoring displays. He wowed people on a nightly basis. And on the road, in Madison Square Garden, he was able, on his own, to sell out MSG whenever the Raptors were coming into town. That was unheard of before with the Toronto Raptors going on the road, selling out arenas. Toronto Raptors were an afterthought. They were an expansion franchise that wasn't supposed to last that long in Toronto. But Vince Carter coming into Toronto and being the face of that franchise changed everything forever about basketball in Canada. I don't think there would be any basketball in Canada without Vince Carter. That speaks to itself. And, as I previously mentioned, Vince did not have much talent around him in Toronto. They traded away Tracy McGrady when he was young, who happens to be his cousin. And they would get these, older players, kind of over-the-hill players. Hakeem Olajuwon in his final year. Antonio Davis, Charles Oakley, Del Curry. They were all coming in. Vince Carter was expected to carry a lot of the weight, which to his credit, he was able to. And he's only been to the playoffs twice with Toronto, but he could have been he very well could have gone on to the finals that year if he hit that game-winning shot against Philadelphia in Game 7. But he gets a lot of criticism for going to his college graduation that day and then going to the game, which I think is unfair because that's a big milestone in his life. Yeah. He's bigger than a basketball player. Getting a college degree from the University of North Carolina is a big deal. He's not just a basketball player. He wants to wear that degree with pride, and I had no problem with him making it work on that day. You can't plan for these things, but people are going to say he didn't care about basketball enough, but, that's just their opinion, but I think they're wrong in that sense. So, given what Vince Carter's meant to the city of Toronto and the country of Canada and what he's been able to do in Canada, if he had a legitimate roster around him in Toronto, not so much dysfunction surrounding him, he would have been higher up there in all-time categories, and a championship or championship runs could have very well been in store for Vince in Toronto. I'll get it. DeMar DeRozan, he's had those same opportunities going to the Eastern Conference Finals. He's had more playoff success than Vince Carter, more team success, which is fair if you want to compare the two's careers in Toronto. But, like I said before, DeMar DeRozan's had a better team and better coaching around him. And kind of, I feel like in Toronto at that point in time at least, more stability. Whereas he didn't have to worry about carrying the shoulder of making basketball in Canada great. Whereas Vince Carter had to shoulder that responsibility on a up-and-coming franchise. So if Vince Carter had the same circumstances in Toronto today, I think the Raptors would have been much better off.
And the Vinsanity show continues as he's just signed with the Atlanta Hawks yesterday. So he's back for a 21st season. He's obviously going to be much more, as he's been a role player later in his very later stage of his career. But I think it's probably, and I looking at one of the headlines about it, may we all love our jobs just as much as Vince Carter, who just signed with the Hawks. That's from Deadspin. And that's a good way of putting it. I think obviously the Hawks aren't really thought of as the forefront for contention this year, but it's side note here, the Hawks are following suit with the Atlanta Falcons. They're going super cheap on their stadium concessions, so I'm considered there's now a conspiracy that the Atlanta sports franchises, I don't know about the Braves, they want to kill all their fans because they're going to have $1 chips, $2 candy, pretzels, bottled water.
We gotta go to Atlanta.
For 3 fries, hot dogs, nachos, pizza. Fries, hot dog, nachos, all $4, and then pizza, bottomless popcorn, bottomless soda, and beer, all $5. So that, I don't know, anyone who goes to a sporting event, even if it's minor league, if it's anything other than that, anywhere up from that, I should say, and even in colleges, you're gonna pay a fortune to get any kind of food and drink. But you know what? That's the Hawks are making it about the fans, and maybe bringing in Vince Carter is a little more of that. He's probably not going to get up for those dunks like he used to.
He still can in Sacramento.
I believe he can. I don't know
from time to time. Not as much
I was going to say
he dropped 24 points on LeBron James last year.
Sparsed out a little bit more, just because you're 40. You gotta.
He's not like he was in Toronto or New Jersey.
Right.
He's not that Vince Carter, but he can still get up. He can still make a highlight play every now and then. And SportsCenter goes crazy because a 41-year-old man was able to do just that. He still can turn back the clock a little bit. But, being that he's been able to play despite being 41 years old, I think it's just his love for the game. Yeah. He truly loves playing basketball, and he knows that it's not forever, Vinsanity or half man, half amazing. He's not going to wow the world forever over the course of the year, but he's been a wanted commodity in the NBA, especially on these rebuilding teams, because of his willingness to pay it forward and really take players under his wing and provide a steady locker room presence on these rebuilding teams. Brooklyn Nets could have used him, quite honestly, but hey, I guess we'll have to just remember the New Jersey Nets days. And I guess at the end of the day, I'm fine with that because at least I got to root for him. But being that he's 41 years old, just the work and preparation he puts into his body. He doesn't really stay up late anymore. He doesn't eat late. Whenever he eats a burger, he eats it without the bun, and he takes these ice baths. Like, he does every single thing, and he always stays sharp. I went to a Nets-Grizzlies game back when he was on the Grizzlies a few years back. I see him sitting on the bench just kind of loosening up his feet with the band, just doing anything he can to stay fresh and stay prepared so that he can play at a decent level and still contribute on any team. So I think it just comes from true love of the game. He'll never disrespect it as long as he's on the court, and just a willingness to be a role player and take players under his wing. That's honestly why I've continued to really admire him going into adulthood, seeing how he was able as a kid to really get me in love with the game of basketball, growing up with these amazing plays, the dunks, the three-pointers, the game winners. He wowed me on a nightly basis. So from there, that just, as a kid, it was amazing to see. And quite honestly, helped me through some difficult times, just seeing him, perform and just see him go through some hard times in his later New Jersey Net days, because he was in trade rumors, the team wasn't winning. But he put a smile on his face. He still went to work, still gave everything he got on a nightly basis. I saw firsthand that he was having fun with the game of basketball, and he was a good teammate. So it doesn't surprise me to see him, continue on when I'm 23 years old and he's 41. And put it in perspective, man, I was in preschool when he won the dunk contest, and he's still playing. I'm 23 years old right now, as I previously said. So just to see firsthand him continuing on his career, and I guess he's racking up some paychecks, sure, but he's also has less of an ego, whereas Allen Iverson or Tracy McGrady weren't really able to transition into the second phases of their career. They want to be Allen Iverson or T-Mac forever. AI, T-Mac, they want to be the man forever.
Yeah, but that's a profound way to put it. I mean, and again, I can't pretend to be the best basketball fan, especially in terms of the middle 2000s,
but honestly,
early 2000s. But
watching Vince Carter, that just got me into basketball.
Yeah.
The Knicks sucked. I'm sorry, but they did. I couldn't really root for them. So I switched over to the Nets. Jason Kidd was cool as well, but Vince Carter kind of brought new life into the Nets. The Nets were a team on the decline, Kenny Martin leaving, but Vince Carter coming in there, single-handedly carrying the Nets from well below 500 to just barely making the Eastern Conference playoffs, beating out the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James. So coming in there just kind of spoke volumes to itself, seeing an MVP-type performance firsthand just really was amazing to see, and that's what's got me into basketball. And a lot of questions have been, I guess, posed. Should he have signed with the title contender and potentially get a ring, a la the Golden State Warriors, like David West has been doing? I think the short answer is no. I think he's doing perfectly fine with carving out the career that he's carving out. He's more worried about getting the accolades in terms of getting Teammate of the Year awards and leaving an impact on the game of basketball as his career is coming to an end, albeit it's not coming to an end anytime soon. Well, maybe after this year. I think he said he's got one more and that's it. And I think he's more concerned about giving back to the game of basketball, helping these next generations out. That's why he signed with the Sacramento Kings last year, a rebuilding team where he can kind of give back that knowledge. Now the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young, he was born 3 months after Vince Carter was drafted. That's crazy. I think that's more of his concern instead of riding the bench and not getting much playing time and collecting a ring at the end of the year. He still wants to play meaningful minutes just to, keep him sane, keep his, I won't say he has a big ego, but any ego he has in check, just to continue to play. And, at the end of the day, just really give back to the game he so loves. He genuinely loves. I went to his camp when I was 16 years old. And a lot of the stuff he said was motivational. He's very big on giving back. I've seen it firsthand. He says, he always had a word of the day. It'd be hard work, perseverance, teamwork, and there's two other words that I can't really balance was one of them, and I said perseverance.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yep. I can't think of the other word right now. I'll get back to you on that on a later date. But that itself right there is just showing how how charitable he is, how much he's willing to give back. He opened up a mental health rehab facility for people who have problems with drugs, anxiety, or anything else that kind of goes on in their life. He just kind of gives back to those that need it, and I think that just shows in itself that he doesn't really care about that ring on his finger. He cares more about giving back to the game he loves, and I don't fault him for that at all. And he knows that by the time the trade deadline happens, he could be dealt to a contender if he really wants that ring, one more playoff run, when he just doesn't have it anymore on a consistent basis. Or he'll get bought out by Atlanta and maybe take like a veterans minimum deal with the Golden State Warriors or Houston Rockets, whichever team looks like they're going to win it all.
Well, file it under, save it for next time, but there are growing rumblings that Joe Girardi is the favorite to be the new long-term manager for the St. Louis Cardinals. That seems to be picking up steam on Twitter right now. And Sonny Gray just worked out of a bases-loaded jam. The Yankees have a 2-0 lead. So he was perfect through 2 innings, and he loaded the bases, but he just got out of it. So those are things, again, file it away for next time. But, I think, Samir, I think we can say confidently that this has been one of our best ones.
I think this was our best one.
Yeah, and hey, we owe a lot of it to Damon for coming on, and we appreciate that. And as we said,
absolutely, Damon, thank you so much for coming on once again, man. Fellow Orange County guy, you said with no hesitation, I'd be happy to join, and we would love to have you on again, man.
Absolutely, and then we have another episode coming up on deck, I'm sure, in the very near future, as I don't believe we have too many trips into other states as I just went on. But Samir, I'm looking forward to it. And once again, we want to thank our audience for tuning in to another edition of Shooting the Breeze.
Peace out, guys. We'll talk to you next time.